In the wide open lands of southern Arizona, where dust swirled like memories and the sky stretched without end, lived a man named Clay McGraw. He was a simple farmer, not rich, not famous, just a man with quiet hands and a tired soul. 12 years ago, Clay had buried his wife under the old sycamore tree on the edge of his property. Since then, he had lived alone, with only his loyal dog Boone, a pair of mules, and the wind howling through the plains. He woke before sunrise, fed the animals, worked the soil, fixed what broke. Then, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, he sat on his porch, hat low, boots dusty, eyes staring at nothing. No children, no visitors, no real laughter in years. He never complained, but he never smiled either. One morning, word reached the nearby town of Tucson that a group of traveling traders had come from New Mexico. They brought cattle, silver crafts, rare herbs, and something strange. They claimed to have found the last Apache woman left behind after the wars. The news spread fast. People gathered near the dusty trading post, curious and excited. Clay wasn't interested in much these days, but something pulled him toward town that day. Maybe it was boredom, maybe fate. He rode into town quietly, hat down, boots heavy. The sun was hot, and the air thick with dust and voices. Then he saw her. She stood in silence beside a wooden wagon. Her hands were bound in front, not tight, but tied like she wasn't meant to go anywhere. Her eyes were dark, calm, but filled with something deep. Not fear, not shame, something older. Like she belonged to the earth more than to people. Her long black hair was braided with feathers and tiny beads. She wore a woven shawl and simple moccasins. The traders called her Nayeli and said she had been left behind after her tribe was forced into the mountains. "She's the last of 'em," one man shouted. "A true Apache, strong, quiet, could be a servant or a wife, or even good luck for someone." The crowd laughed. Some men whistled. A woman spat on the ground. Clay stood still. Nayeli didn't flinch. She didn't even look at the crowd. Someone asked, "Who wants to make an offer? She ain't a slave, no sir, but she's got nowhere to go. Best she ends up somewhere useful." Most folks joked, turned away. Nobody really wanted to be known as the one who bought an Apache woman. Then Clay stepped forward. "I'll take her," he said. His voice was dry as gravel but steady. The crowd fell silent. "You serious, McGraw?" A man laughed. "You live alone in the middle of nowhere." Clay reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. It held every dollar he had saved for the last 2 years. Money meant to buy a new mule and some fencing wire. He handed it over. "That enough?" The trader shrugged. "She's yours." Nayeli said nothing. She looked at Clay for the first time, her eyes steady. Clay nodded once. "Come on, let's go." They rode home in silence. The only sound was the wind and the clop of hooves. Clay didn't talk, and Nayeli didn't ask questions. She sat behind him on the mule cart, holding a blanket close, watching the horizon. At the farm, Clay showed her to the small guest room in the back of the house. It was dusty but clean. He gave her fresh water, a set of his late wife's clothes, and bread with beans for dinner. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I just didn't want them to treat you like an animal." Nayeli said nothing. She simply nodded once, then shut the door. Days passed, then weeks. She didn't try to run. Instead, she worked, quietly, carefully. She rose before dawn, fed the chickens, watered the garden, chopped firewood, and even fixed the loose roof tile that Clay had ignored for months. She didn't speak, but she watched everything. At night, she sat by the fire outside, humming low songs in her own tongue, songs that felt like wind over stones or the whisper of trees. One day, Clay saw her kneel near the barn and bury something wrapped in cloth. When he asked about it, she simply said, "For protection." He didn't press her, he didn't understand her ways, but he respected them. In time, Clay began to speak more. He told her about his wife, about how she died from fever, how he buried her with his own hands, how the silence afterward nearly drove him mad. Nayeli listened. Still, she said little, but she never looked away. One evening, while Clay was out fixing a broken fence, a summer storm rolled in fast. The wind roared and lightning split the sky. Clay tried to hurry back, but a bolt struck a nearby tree and knocked him off his feet. He lay in the mud unconscious. When he woke up, he was in bed. His chest hurt, but he was alive. A warm cloth lay on his forehead. The smell of herbs filled the room. Nayeli sat beside him, chanting softly, pressing her hands to his chest. Her eyes were focused, her voice steady. It wasn't magic. It was memory, knowledge passed down from generations. Clay whispered, "You saved me." She nodded slowly. "You are not weak," she said quietly, her first full sentence to him. "You are kind, but you do not see yourself." He tried to sit up. "Why did you stay?" Nayeli looked out the window toward the land. "You let me choose," she said. "I chose to stay." That night, they sat together by the fire for the first time. No words, just silence. But this silence was different. It wasn't heavy, it wasn't lonely. It was full. Something old had been planted that day. Not romance, not yet, but respect. And maybe even something sacred, like two forgotten spirits finding each other again in the middle of nowhere. As the months passed, the dusty farm began to feel different. Clay McGraw, once known as the Ghost Farmer, was no longer a man of silence. He spoke more, laughed sometimes, and even started rebuilding the broken windmill that had rusted for years. The chickens multiplied, the crops grew taller, and Boone, his old dog, barked joyfully again, all because of Nayeli. Though she still spoke little, her presence was everywhere. She had replanted the herb garden with native medicines, added wind chimes made of bone and wood, and painted symbols on stones that Clay didn't understand. But he never asked her to stop. Something about them made him sleep better. They didn't call each other husband or wife, but something deeper than marriage tied them together. Trust. One crisp autumn evening, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Clay finally asked, "Do you miss your people?" Nayeli nodded, slow and solemn. "They live in me still, in song, in dreams, but they are far now, most gone." "I'm sorry," Clay said softly. She turned to him. "You lost too." He gave a faint smile. "I guess we've both been carrying ghosts." She tilted her head. "Then maybe the ghosts brought us together." Clay didn't answer. He simply reached out and placed his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. But peace in the Wild West never lasted long. Word had spread. Men in town started whispering about the Apache woman again. One claimed he saw her making medicine and called it witchcraft. Another accused her of stealing bones from the cemetery, which was untrue. Some just didn't like seeing a white farmer and a native woman working side by side as equals. Then 3 bounty riders came looking for trouble. They rode onto the farm one morning, with dust in their eyes and greed in their hearts, hardened men with long coats and faster hands than thoughts. "Morning," the lead one said. "You Clay McGraw?" "I am," Clay said, stepping off his porch, his shotgun slung across his shoulder. "Not in threat, just tradition. We heard you're harboring a woman that don't belong here. Apache blood, property of the territory, if not the army." Clay's face darkened. "She's no one's property. She's free. She lives here because she chooses to." The second man spit tobacco near Clay's boot. "That ain't how the law sees it." Nayeli stepped out of the house, calm, tall, strong. The third man licked his lips. "We could sell her back. Government's still paying for 'em. Might even give a medal." Nayeli stared at them like stone. Clay's voice turned to steel. "Leave, before I bury the 3 of you under the cottonwood." The men laughed and rode off, but promised to return. That night Nayeli spoke. "They will come back with fire, with others." Clay didn't argue. "Then we get ready." He had been a peaceful man for years, but that night something old awoke in him, a protector, a man who had buried enough already. Nayeli sharpened arrowheads from flint and bone. She scattered ash and chili powder in the wind so the riders would lose their vision if they charged. She taught Clay how to hear footsteps before they arrived, how to move like shadows, how to stand behind silence like a wall. She also gave him something she had buried long ago, a knife carved from buffalo horn, passed from her grandfather. "For when your hands must speak," she said. 3 nights later the riders returned with 5 more men, torches in hand. The fire from their torches burned bright against the night sky, and their voices rang out like curses. "Bring the Apache out now, Clay." Clay stood at the gate, shotgun in hand, Boone growling beside him. "She's not coming out, but you boys might not leave." They laughed and charged, but the farm was ready. A rider's horse stumbled into a pit trap and snapped its leg. Another was blinded by red dust blown from Nayeli's hidden pouch. Arrows whistled through the air, not to kill, but to scatter. Clay fired once, hitting a man's boot and knocking him off his horse. Then Nayeli appeared, standing on the roof of the barn like a spirit in the wind, her shawl flapping, eyes blazing with ancient fire. She raised her voice for the first time in war-speak, a chilling, high-pitched Apache battle cry. It froze every man where he stood. The leader dismounted slowly. You're a witch." "No," she said, "I'm the storm your greed called." Then silence. The men turned and fled, leaving behind their pride and weapons. The next day the sheriff came riding, expecting trouble. Instead, he found peace. The farm stood untouched. No bloodshed, just scattered bootprints and broken egos. The sheriff knew Clay from years ago. He tipped his hat. "They won't be back." "I don't want trouble," Clay said. "I know, but sometimes trouble wants you." He looked at Nayeli, who nodded politely. The sheriff smiled. "You too. Y'all might not fit the picture folks painted of the West, but maybe you're the one they'll remember." Years passed. People came and went, but the story of Clay and Nayeli stayed. Some said she was a spirit, others claimed she saved the land itself. Children would sneak near their farm to catch a glimpse of the last Apache woman, and always left with tales of a strong, silent woman and a farmer with soft eyes and a sharper mind. Together, they rebuilt more than a home. They built a legend. They never married under law, but they were known as husband and wife in every way that mattered. They grew old together, read books, sat under the stars, sang songs, his from Ireland and the frontier, hers from the canyons and fire circles. And when Clay passed quietly in his sleep, Nayeli wrapped him in a woven blanket, placed the buffalo horn knife on his chest, and buried him beneath the sycamore, next to his first wife, under the same sky. She placed a single feather on the grave and whispered, "You found me when I was forgotten. I walked with you when I could have run. I stayed because your silence spoke kinder than most men's words." She lived 5 more winters. When she passed, no funeral was held, but one morning the people found a perfect circle of stones around Clay's grave. In the center, a hawk feather and a bowl of red earth. No one touched it. They just watched and remembered.